this was a motherfucker who knew what was going on. You know, he was saying, hey, what's that sound? You know, everyone look what's going down.
The Buffalo Springfield theory.
What do you know about two certified bangers? PhantasmaCast.
Welcome back to PhantasmaCast, where we watch our favorite movies two at a time,
And you should too.
I'm guy number one.
I'm guy number two.
And today's double feature is 1980's Dress to Kill and 1981's Blowout.
Hell yeah, brother. I'm nodding my head.
That is right. It's a dazzling De Palma double feature of dames, danger, and depravity.
That's so many alliteratives, I lost count.
But first, a reminder that the best way to listen to new episodes as they release is to subscribe to PhantasmaCast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And you can also catch us on Instagram, TikTok by looking up PhantasmaCast or at Two Certified Bangers. Back to the show. So, Dressed to Kill.
Heard of it?
So what is Dressed to Kill?
One of two certified bangers.
I'll tell you even more.
Okay.
Brian De Palma, I'm reading the back of this criterion here. Brian De Palma ascended to the highest ranks of American suspense filmmaking with this virtuoso, explicit, erotic thriller. At once tongue-in-cheek and scary as hell, Dressed to Kill revolves around the grisly murder of a woman in Manhattan and how her psychiatrist, her brainiac teenage son, and the prostitute who witnessed the crime try to piece together what happened while the killer remains at large. With its masterfully executed scenes of horror, voluptuous camera work, and passionate score, Dressed to Kill is a veritable symphony of terror, enhanced by vivid performances by Angie Dickinson, Michael Caine, and Nancy Allen.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're going to comment on this every time we read a back of the box, but they love their alliteration. They love it so much. Voluptuous camera work.
Hey, if it works, it works. You know what I mean? So Dressed to Kill, we're returning to our De Palma discovery era.
Yeah,
right.
We caught the bug with Body Double, and we've come down with the case of the De Palmas. The only thing that's going to cure it is more De Palma.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, like, I think that this is like the era of De Palma's filmography that kind of really dips into the Giallo genre a bit.
Yeah, because it kind of started with Sisters, really, is where most critics agree that that's like where his like horror thriller proclivities really started, right around there. Because before that, he was more political or like punk kind of with his late 60s films like Greetings and Hi Mom.
His early De Niro collaborations. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got that that early De Palma like box set because we were in the middle of our like De Palma, and I was like, let's go back early.
Yeah.
And they are very different films than what he's known for.
Yeah, so different. Like you can tell that it was more about his personal desire to have a statement rather than a like solidified style at the time. He was still figuring out his style, but he still had a clearly defined voice, and that's what like people who were plugged into like that film scene at the time were like responding to. And even like Pauline Kael is like, yeah, Pauline Kael, she's gonna come up because
She's gonna come up.
she has like an up and down relationship with De Palma's films, but like out the gate with Greetings, it may not be the first one, but it was like the first big one, the first De Niro at least. She was like, yeah, no, there's something here. Let's watch this.
He's 100% a filmmaker that is he's kind of like that is it Buffalo Springfield song. It's like, hey, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. He was looking what was going down. You know what I mean? Okay. And he was like, he was reflecting, the time in the movies that he's watching earlier. And I think, with these films, his thrillers, his giallos.
Because that's something that's not lost is even when he got more stylistically experimental, or I refuse to say he's derivative. I don't think he's derivative at all. But when he got more stylistically like forward with his films, there was still a distinct personal touch to it.
Absolutely.
So even if you don't subscribe to the auteur theory, sorry, some people just have a really strong vision and voice, and it comes through. We may not see that a lot with contemporary movies, and that's why I think they kind of suck a little bit. I want authorship. I don't want it to just be a corporate stamp of approval. Like, as much as we, gravitate towards like A24 releases or like Neon releases and stuff like that, that's all well and nice.
Yeah.
But there are still like distinct voices within those that are being elevated by those distributors, not like dictated, which there's a difference, I think.
Yeah. I think the most egregious of those examples is probably like the Star Wars sequels, like with the popularity of Andor, a lot of people are coming out, like kind of pointing out the problems of the sequels. And whereas like a lot of the problems pointed out by the prequels were, like, George, what are you doing? This is a different tone than your original trilogy, right? The criticisms of the sequels are you're making your characters do things that don't make sense to even the characters that you've established in the first movie of your trilogy, Yeah. And a lot of the suspicion is like they're doing that to appeal to as vast an audience as possible, right?
Yeah, or trying to rush the product out to market before it's even done cooking.
Yeah. Half baked.
Yeah, which is the problem with like the Marvel shows. Mm-hmm. And I think I read somewhere that was a Disney mandate. So as much as like people want to like poo-poo on Marvel and stuff, that was actually a Disney mandate to get those certain amount of shows out. Mm-hmm. And Marvel had to like meet that demand. But now I think they're trying to, rightfully so, scale back because it's homework at this point. It's no longer like an event.
Yeah, it is homework. But I guess the larger point is like these bigger movies now are more transparently products than ever before. You know,
whereas like Dressed to Kill is a product of this sicko's mind.
It's like honestly, these two movies are fucking works of art. And to go back to your point about perspectives, right? Like an artist with a perspective. Yeah. I could try and come up with a bunch of smart reasons why I love De Palma so much, but it always comes down for me to how much this man loves naked women.
Yes. And
how he uses the camera to tell a story. Mm-hmm. Those two things.
In his words, he would be like, I just love photographing beautiful women.
Yeah, yes. He makes films from the perspective of a teenager, but with the skill of a fucking master of his craft. And I respect that.
Yeah. And if you've seen any interview with him, he's just like a soft-spoken little dork.
Yeah.
Kind of. I actually have an interview that I'll bring up when we discuss Blowout, but it's an interview with Noah Baumbach, and it's from 2010. So he's 70 during this interview. He's a spry guy for 70.
Yeah.
He's got like the dentures in or whatever, so he's got a little bit of the denture lisp going on, but like
but he's still that 14-year-old that loves him some titties, you know what I mean?
And Noah Baumbach's like, I love that part in Blowout where it just says shower on the door, and he goes he like gets all red. He gets red faced. He's just that's just De Palma, man.
I bet I know from a quote that I sourced that I'll say later, but I know that he absolutely is loving this kind of rediscovery of his films from the late 70s, early 80s. Dressed to Kill is a really unique story, right? It opens with essentially a bored housewife, right? And it opens with this kind of grape fantasy that she has in a shower, right? And with the kind of wake up moment is she's in bed with her husband, getting one of his, what does she call it?
Wham bang
specials.
specials.
And she goes to her therapist, played by Michael Caine, and she says she's essentially bored, right? So she's horny, you know?
Yeah, she's like, Dr. Elliot,
what should I do?
I want to fuck.
Yeah. Would you fuck me?
He's like, yes, I would. Very, very clinical responses.
Yeah. He's like, I'll be honest with you. I'm not gonna yank your chain. I would, you know?
Yeah. And then we get the first like nod that something's up when it's, well, why wouldn't you? Uh-huh. And then we get the cutaway to him
he looks in the
mirror.
Yeah.
And then, well, I'm married.
Mm-hmm. That's an important point about this movie is something that pops up in a lot of De Palma's work around this time, especially in Sisters, is duality.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You have mirror shots galore in this movie. You have you have multiple blondes as protagonists, right? You have characters with split personalities. You have, and a lot of the movie is presented in a very signature De Palma way in split diopter.
Yeah. Or just split screen, just two different events being played simultaneously.
And that's, I think when it comes to his craft and his style is something that is so, I think, uniquely De Palma, right? Like you would be accused of imitating him if you even attempted to do things the way that he shoots and edits his films.
Yeah. I think it's lazy to say that he's a derivative of Hitchcock because he just admires the man and utilizes what was set up by Hitchcock to then do his own thing with it. We should all do that. We should all be so lucky.
You're absolutely right. I'm angered whenever the imitation accusations are leveled at De Palma because it's like Hitchcock gave the cinema world tools, right? In much the same way that D.W. Griffith gave the cinema world tools to work with, right?
Yeah.
It's just...
Hopefully we all said, you can keep the racism.
yeah. We'll leave that in 1913.
Yeah.
But it's a foundation, right? He's building on a foundation that Hitchcock left. Look at Tarantino, right?
Okay.
His movies literally are imitations. Right. It's not that like Tarantino has a style in the sense that he's kind of creating Frankensteins.
Yeah.
And he's good at it. Right. It makes great films and that's his style and that's OK. But I don't think that De Palma does the same thing with Hitchcock.
Mm-mm. No, because he also has that duality in himself of wanting to be the punk who made Greetings and Hi Mom, but also that little pervert who made Sisters and Carrie and Obsession and now Dressed to Kill. It's the what's the word? He's like a transgressive but also an academic.
That's apt. I think. He's got a style, but it's like he knows where he comes from.
Yeah, that's the best kind of transgressive because then you're not just speaking out your ass. He's like, oh, I know the history, but I'm going to do my own thing with it.
Yeah, and what he did was he took those tools and he trained them on this post-Vietnam American zeitgeist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he took what you might have seen in Hitchcock's era of thrillers, and he made it more bloody, visceral, titillating, chaotic.
Yeah.
And dare I say, I'm going to use this word again, dazzling. Because I think his movies are really fucking dazzling. And not that he does it in such a indulgent way, you know? But like he really kind of shows off what like cinema can do in his films.
Yeah, it's not so self-indulgent as like reflective of what he personally values or has been like thinking about or pondering, but then uses, okay, what's the best way to cinematically present this? What do I love? Hitchcock, clearly, you know?
Yeah.
Women, clearly, you know? But he's just using the, different, I don't want to say like morals of the time, but like, the standards of like what can go into movies has changed since Psycho. Like we had to cut around nudity. Now it's like, there better be some nudity in that because that's how we're going to sell it.
But back to the movie. So you're dealing with all these themes of duality, and you mentioned Brian De Palma himself has kind of two sides to him. So, and probably the biggest kind of Hitchcockian element to the movie is the movie's kind of split in half, right? You have one protagonist in Angie Dickinson, who De Palma said he cast because he didn't have a lot of time to build character, so he wanted someone who the audience would know and immediately like, which I think is so smart, right? Because she has like essentially 2 scenes of dialogue.
Yeah.
The entire time she's in the movie, but there's so much visual storytelling with her character that you know who she is implicitly.
Yeah. Or I read the little essay that comes with the criterion of Dress to Kill. They smartly point out that yes, there's just those 2 scenes of dialogue between her and her son, and then her and Dr. Elliot, Michael Caine. But then the rest of it, we're like invited to think how she thinks.
Yes. And that's how the editing and the filming and the cutting works to kind of put you in her brain a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to what I think is just the crowning achievement of this movie. Like, you could end the movie right here and it would already be like a film school worthy teaching moment.
At the elevator scene?
No, at the at the elevator scene, but with the art museum kind of chase sequence, right?
Yeah.
And that's the sequence where you were talking about, where you're invited to kind of think how she is thinking. And what's interesting is that the way the script was written with narration.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So, all of those parts where Angie Dickinson is kind of thinking, and maybe you have a split diopter shot that is like her remembering something, like that's in the script of her kind of like literally saying it. And then Angie Dickinson tells a story about how, a couple months after the movie wrapped, she's like, okay, so when do I record my narration? And De Palma cheekily was just like, we don't need it.
It's just that good.
Yes, because
Watch
he had
this.
cut it together and was like, it fucking works.
Yeah.
And when you watch the movie, it's excellent, right? Because of the conversation you just had with the psychiatrist. I forget which one, psychiatrist or the psychotherapist. Because of the conversation she just had with her therapist, she is unhappy sexually in her marriage, right?
That's all we need to know. Really. And it's nice to know of her relationship with her son for him being involved later in the plot.
Yeah.
But right now, this is top of mind for her.
So what do we get? She's in the art museum looking around, and what does she see? She sees a couple flirting and groping each other.
Yeah, doing little butt pats.
Exactly. She sees, so there's that, but then she looks over and she sees a family. And so you've got those 2 things that are weighing on her mind. She wants to be satisfied, carnally, but she also has this responsibility as a mother and a wife that she is like that. Like I would risk that if I were to indulge in these desires that I'm having. So you get this like internal desire, and there's no dialogue whatsoever. You just kind of get it, you know? And then you throw in this guy who he looks like an 80s like yuppie slut version of Phil Dunphy from Modern Family.
Okay, yeah.
And he sits down and she notices him. And then he gets up and he walks away, and she has this kind of inner conflict, you know, of I want to talk to this man. I want to fuck this man.
Yeah.
You know?
She during that interaction too, she tries different tactics
Yes.
of like glancing over just to see if he'll glance back. He does, and she's like, "Oh shit,
It's on.
She's like, "Hold up, I'm gonna bust out the big guns." And she takes off her glove to like show the ring, and that's when he takes off. So she's like, "Fuck."
But then she like leaves one of her gloves on the ground, and
Yeah, purely on accident,
Yeah.
not as
Yeah.
like a ploy.
but he picks it up and then he starts to chase her, and then he puts his hand on her shoulder and she turns around and she goes, you know.
And he's wearing the glove.
Yeah, yeah. But she doesn't notice it at first. So then she goes to look for her glove, realizes, and then that's when we get a split screen shot of the glove, and she realizes he was wearing it to play with her.
Yeah.
And then the you know, the expression she has on her face in that scene is like, dear God, if I talk to this man, I'm going to fuck him.
Yeah.
You know?
It's that realization you have. Maybe you haven't had it since high school or something. But like of when someone came on to you or like was like, "Hey, you should come over after school or something." And you're like, "Nah."
Am I about to fumble this right now?
Yeah. And you realize maybe months, years later, "Oh no, I fumbled the bag so hard." So props to her for being like immediately like, "Hold on, I'm not gonna fumble this.
Yes.
I'm gonna fuck this."
So, you know, the whole thing ends with her getting in a cab with him, going back to his place, and like it's morning time
Yeah.
when she leaves with him.
All night long.
And it's nighttime when she decides that they've been fucking all day. She gets in the elevator, realizes she's left her ring in his apartment.
Yeah. Which is like the third use of that. Like kind of like, wait a minute, where did I leave that? Because the second one was her underwear in the cab.
And, you know, I think more modern analysis of that movie would actually dock this movie for being so overt in those like remembrances. You know, I feel like modern critics would probably be like, why didn't you just show us in the moment? Why do you got to like do these overt references? Because it's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's cool.
And it's economical. So fuck off.
Yeah. Now someone would just be like, "Oh, I can't believe I did that. How boring."
Yeah.
In the interview with Noah Baumbach, it reminds me of a little moment that De Palma had about lamenting setups or like establishing shots in movies. He was like, "Oh, like when you see like an overhead helicopter shot of Manhattan to establish that we're in Manhattan, is that an idea?" "Oh, I'm so bored by that."
Is that an idea?
So having someone be like, "Oh, I can't believe I forgot my underwear. Is that an idea?" No, the idea is to go, "Hold up." Whew, it flashes on. That is an idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's another thing to show you like, no, I did show you this before. You just weren't looking, right? Maybe you failed to notice the ring was on the shelf, the same as she failed to notice that was sitting on the counter. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're supposed to be like her in the moment. So anyways, she's going back up to the 7th floor where he lives.
Yeah.
Door opens. Bobby's there.
Yeah.
With a razor blade, just waiting to cut her up. And she's murdered in the elevator.
Yeah. Very Norman Bates Psycho. That is the most overt psycho reference ever. That's the shower sequence.
They exchanged the shower for an elevator. Yeah. But that's not the first time we see Bobby in the movie.
No. Because the first time, do you mind me talking about it, or do you want to go into it? Because I know.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, go for it.
Was when she steps out of the museum.
Yes.
And she has the other glove after just realizing, shit, I almost fumbled the bag kind of thing. So
you did it to me again.
So she has the other glove. And she's like, well, fuck this glove.
Yeah.
I don't have my other one. It falls on the floor. And then she sees, the man teasing the glove outside the taxi.
Yeah.
But that pan shot of her going, hold up. And the camera pans from her face to the cab, right in the smack middle of it is this blonde woman in a trench coat with sunglasses looking from her to the cab as the camera passes by.
And you're not supposed to notice that.
No.
At first.
What has trained you to look at that?
Exactly. And this is how De Palma kind of hacks your brain a little bit, right? Yeah. He's showing you the danger, right? But how is Angie Dickinson supposed to know that this is the person who's going to murder her standing 10 feet in front of her later, How are we supposed to know that, right?
Yeah. The only indication we get from that is seeing her, Bobby in the background go to pick up the glove. We see her approach the glove. Then we get the very overt shot. That's a split diopter shot of her, like scraping the glove off the ground. It's like I think it's one of the rare instances of like a horizontal split diopter. Actually, I'm smart for recognizing that, and you are too.
So, obviously this is a scene that the way it plays out is, I think it got De Palma in a lot of hot water with feminist groups at the time, because it is a woman who is experiencing a moment of sexual liberation, right? Yeah. And then she's immediately murdered afterwards. And so the way you could read that on the surface level is it's anti-women. It's misogynist, And I think De Palma's career was also like hindered by the fact that he was kind of seen as a misogynist, which I think is totally unfair. Right. His films, and we said it a lot in our past couple episodes, his films are shot with the male gaze, right? His films do have an element of sleaze to them. But we also just got done talking about the fact that this was a motherfucker who knew what was going on. He was saying, hey, what's that sound? Everyone look what's going down.
The Buffalo Springfield theory.
He's making these movies as commentaries on the male gaze.
Yeah.
Right. And misogynist attitudes towards women. Right. So to give a blanket statement that these are misogynist films, as the producer of Just to Kill puts it, is trivial,
Yeah.
Because De Palma is working in genre, right? And that's something that you also said in one of our past episodes, is he understands the tenets of a genre. One of them in this particular case is a killer's there killing beautiful women,
Yeah. Is that morally right? No. But I mean, this is just, it's an illusion. It's fake.
Yeah.
It's a story, and that's just what pushes people's buttons. It's meant to push buttons, not to be instructive or didactic about his personal view of women.
Right. And the fact that so this movie came out in 1980, right? Probably the most gore, we've seen in a movie at this point is probably like Friday the 13th, Yeah. So the fact that the violence is so visceral at this point in cinematic history, he is saying this is a little ridiculous. Isn't the violence that women experience in these movies just a little bit fucking ridiculous?
Yeah. And then because he's a little joker, he's kind of like, and aren't you a little ridiculous for eating it up?
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
That is the answer.
Yeah. These movies don't. They like take themselves seriously, but then they don't. You know, he's got little jokes hidden.
He's a
around the
jokester.
movies.
He's a little jokey guy. There's a big joke at the end that I hope we'll circle back around to.
I think I know which one you're talking about. So I kind of want to end that segment with a quote that I found from De Palma. He says, all those movies they were trashing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are the ones that people are writing about now.
Yeah.
And the ones that seem to have some kind of life. The revisionism will start. And as an artist, you have to not get crushed by the particular establishment that's in place at the time. Which is, you know, like I think I lament the fact that like, because people saw his films as misogynist in a time that at the same time, you know, women were going through, you know, second wave feminism, right?
Yeah.
And those two things seem at odds with each other. It's unfortunate that kind of colored his movies at the time.
Yeah.
But now we're looking back and we're recognizing that, you know, he is kind of a fucking master. So.
Yeah. And like, I even read somewhere that Angie Dickinson was like, "This is my favorite
Yeah.
movie that I'm in," and people are like, "What?" Like, sorry, maybe I just had a good time. It's not. I didn't look at it and be like, "Wow, that is like emblematic of all women everywhere."
Yeah.
If you go through life looking at movies like that from a didactic point of view at all times, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel kind of sorry for you.
It's trivial, right? It's easy to say, oh, this is misogynist, or oh, this is, you know, anti-trans even from today. Like this movie, I think, is in hot water in a different, you know, aspect because of how it presents trans characters.
Yeah.
But like, just try and recognize what the dude was trying to do.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And like, we're not trying to be like, don't criticize him or anything like that. We're not trying to like critic proof De Palma.
Just
or anything
don't
like
take the easy way out though in your critique of the film.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, you like it? It's trash, actually. Here's why. Have you ever thought about theory? We haven't talked about it yet, but Bobby, the blonde in the trench coat, is in the reality of this movie the transgender identity of Dr. Elliot, Michael Caine, who turns out to be, you know, the killer. So that's his duality, right? We talked about the duality that's present in the movie. That's his duality, is the upstanding doctor who wants to solve this series of murders, and that trans identity within him who's fighting to get to be free and get a sex change.
He even says it in the essay. It's like the pulp conception of transgender identity, but also dissociative identity disorder, right?
Yeah.
So the movie, in a way, is a gross misrepresentation of those two things. It kind of like molds them together, and that's not really how it works.
No, but I think he was working with what they were willing to discuss in popular media at the time.
He just made a movie version of it. That's just what I'm chalking it up to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think he was like, interesting. You're battling. There's like a duality going on within your mind of like your perception or like your feelings of yourself, the internal self, versus everyone's perception of your external self. Interesting. Now, that's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Oh. And he wrote this.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And, you know, like it trivializes it a little bit in terms of like, oh, that Michael Caine's character, every time he's sexually aroused, he becomes Bobby and wants to kill,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a nod. That is such a Psycho nod. That is like, here we are having the like end of Psycho explanation of like, here's why Norman is the way he is.
Yeah. But it's like, it's not untrue that like serial murderers do it because it is based on, you know, a sort of psychosexuality, right? That so he's taking like a psychology gumbo and making it a movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like if this were a movie that were like correct in how it treated all these things, it'd not be a very entertaining.
It'd be pretty boring. It would be a PBS special.
Yeah, but he does take a moment to present an actual trans person in the film with the Phil Donahue interview.
Yeah. In split screen. Too. He knows what he's doing.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's actually the interview that inspired him to make the character that he made in the movie. Which I'm like an actual trans voice in a film in the 80s, in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Who else was doing that?
Right.
You know, De Palma was. So there you go.
Yeah. And then I think the like even jokier, like, come on guys, don't take this all that seriously.
Yeah.
In the terms of like this movie, like take transgender people seriously, but don't take my movie all that seriously.
Yeah.
Is the follow up like explanation between Nancy Allen and Keith Gordon, the son.
They're
in
like
the
having a
restaurant.
drink at the end of the movie.
He's like, I've heard about sex changes, but tell me more.
Yeah.
And then there's that split diopter shot with the woman, the older woman. You've read the essay. So the essay says the old lady got a case of the vapors. And I knew you would get a kick out of that.
She's explaining what a vaginoplasty is.
Yeah.
She's like, so they take the penis and cut it down the middle and make a vagina out of it. And there's a woman in the background just like,
What a devil.
dude, that's like Nancy Reagan, you know? That's exactly how Nancy Reagan would react to that conversation.
That's every like audience member who would watch this and get uncomfortable with it too. So he's kind of like poking you a little bit, be like, I bet you had that reaction.
Yeah.
Too.
One of the reasons we put these movies together also is that, like, sure, they're both De Palma films, but I think they're both movies that borrow heavily from the Giallo genre. You will find these movies, not so much Blowout necessarily, but you'll see Body Double and Dress to Kill on lists of the best American Giallo films, right? So, I think these movies, De Palma borrows enough from that genre that you could make the argument that they are Giallo films.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read from an article because this Patrick Bromley put together that just is a very economical way to describe what I mean when I say this is a Giallo film. The tropes of a Giallo typically center around a mystery that begins with a murder or series of murders, which are then investigated by some sort of outsider working independently of the police, who, it should be said, often prove to be ineffectual. This is like giving you kind of like thoughts to, the Korean thriller films that we were talking about.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is a perfect time to mention Dennis Franz. Dennis Franz, our man, is back.
The murders tend to be bloody and often have women as the target, many of whom will appear nude moments before dying. The arts and/or fashion play a major role in many of the movies. In the most traditional gialli, the killer wears black leather gloves and carries out the murders with knives and straight razors. There are multiple red herrings in determining the killer's identity, and the motives are often psychosexual and/or nonsensical in nature. Maybe intentionally so.
Yeah. To keep all you smarties from trying to guess who the killer is or why.
They tend to focus on form over content and about how the sequences are staged, than about breaking narrative ground. Also, before getting into specifics, consider the debt that De Palma's overall style owes to Italian gialli. The gliding camera, the long takes, the way scenes play out without dialogue or exposition, working purely on the rise and fall of an emotional impact based purely on imagery and music. No single one of these elements is exclusive to the Giallo, but all combine these stylistic conceits into the same movie, and you're creating the template for a Giallo film.
Yeah, it's a distinct palette.
Yeah.
You pick it up, give it a little lick. You know,
That tastes like Giallo.
That tastes like Giallo.
Do you know what Giallo means in Italian?
Yellow.
Yellow.
I'm a smarty too.
So, like, I'm calling this our Giallo summer, because I love how, I don't think that you would traditionally lump these films into the Giallo genre, but the ingredients are there for sure.
Mm-hmm. If one American is going to be accused of doing Giallo, it's De Palma.
Yeah, it's best that it's De Palma. And then I didn't want to leave the Dress to Kill conversation without talking about Nancy Allen for a minute.
Oh, yeah. I view this double feature as kind of like a Nancy Allen double feature.
It could be. Yeah. As I was writing my notes, I was like, oh my God, we could have totally framed it as a Nancy Allen double feature. Because she's in a string of his movies, starting with, I think, Carrie.
I think so, too. I think that.
On up to Blowout. And they were married during that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have an anecdote about them being married in a situation in Blowout.
So I think Nancy Allen, and for a time at least, was De Palma's muse, if not just like a collaborator. I think the thing about the characters Nancy Allen plays in De Palma's films is that on the surface, it's easy to write them off, right? Oh, Liz Blake is just a hooker. Oh, Sally is just a hooker. But I think that's intentional. In a lot of ways, De Palma is playing to genre conventions, right? And a big feature in these Giallo films is the kind of ditzy woman who appears nude and then gets killed. But what are genre conventions but audience expectations? You know?
Right, exactly. I think the way she plays those characters is not conventional.
Exactly.
Her, like, prescription, I guess, or her assignment may be genre, may be conventional, may be tropey, but I think they're his direction and her performance is what makes it stand out. That's why we're talking about it still.
Yeah. And they're both characters are prostitutes, right? But am I right in that? She's a prostitute in Blowout, right? Or she's like a scammer.
Yeah, she's more.
She pretends to be a prostitute.
Yeah, I think there's a line or two about her saying like, "I never actually sleep with them." It's we imply it. We
She's
get
just
close
there
enough to like
entrap them.
Yeah, she's like honeypotting them.
Yes.
Bit. Yeah.
So like the two characters have essentially kind of the same profession, right? But like she plays them very differently. Liz Blake is like being a hooker. That's just her day job. At night she's trading stocks.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I cannot imagine her in Blowout being on the line, being like, "Hey, what's that buying at? Yeah, 1 second." And like, "Hey, I'm talking to my mom real quick. Can I get right back to you?" "Yeah, sell. I'll have the money." She's a degenerate gambler.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of.
Yes, and she gets those trading tips from the Johns that she picks up. Like she's a smart woman with agency.
Yeah,
I challenge you to find that in like a typical Giallo film.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen our fair share of those, and I cannot remember one where it starts with her talking to her client, being like, "So you're saying what trades at 500?
Autotron?" Yeah. And then on top of that, she takes over the role of the detective in this story. Dennis Franz in that great exchange that they have. It's like, it's basically kind of like a Western almost, where he's like, you better figure out who did this. Bring me a witness in 2 days or I'm locking you up.
Yeah, I'm gonna book you. 2 days.
I love that Dennis Franz and De Palma found each other in life. But what kind of character is Sally in Blowout?
She's a yearner. She knows her lot in life right now. She's like a makeup consultant, like a salesperson, but she's got this like side gig with Dennis Franz of getting hot tips about someone who's like primed to be blackmailed, basically. So she'll be the fall person for them to be on camera, to then use them as blackmail, and then they'll split the earnings, because she's kind of jaded by the world too. Like doing that kind of work would obviously jade you to what people are capable of. Yeah. But like she even says like, oh, I don't even watch the news. Like it's too depressing.
Yeah. She is just like kind of like disappointed by the world. She's a very sympathetic character. I feel. Yeah. Like when you first meet her, she's like, she's recovering from just being in a car accident. So she's just kind of like, what's going on? And so like that first scene makes you like want to protect her the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Just like Travolta is like, oh, you poor sweet thing. Yeah. Let's get you out of here and get you to the hotel. But then like the next morning, she's a different person. Mm-hmm. She's like, hey, what are you listening to? Blah, blah, blah. Well, anyways, I got to get going over to my job because I have this passion and it's makeup. But then, she has secrets and it's that con job stuff. But then she also has skepticism of the news because like, oh, it's so depressing. Who knows who's telling the truth and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then, it's revealed to her by Travolta that maybe there's still the wool being pulled over her eyes too, of like, about how much money she's getting from the split. Like, you ever thought about that? She's like, no.
Well, even Dennis Franz is like, yeah, the guy, and he told me he'd pay me $6,000. And she's like, you told me 3. He's like, well, that was before. Get the other 3 after.
3 now, 3 later.
Putting them in scenes together in both movies is just a beautiful choice.
Yeah.
But all that to say, like Nancy Allen is a fantastic addition to these movies, and she delivers anything but like a one-dimensional performance.
Agree.
Even in Carrie, like she's the bitch fucking villain in Carrie.
Yeah.
But like there's something, a little bit of something there to make you kind of sympathize with her,
Yeah. You're like, hold on. She's not grown yet. She's just a shit teenager like we all were.
Yeah.
Don't kill her, Carrie.
Even Nancy Allen, I watched an interview where she's just like, I never thought of her character in Carrie as a bitch. I thought of her as like, I'm this cool girl, and here this like loser, like just trampled on my fucking prom plans. Of course, I'm gonna like terrorize this girl, you know. So, but see, that's a choice. That's a perspective. That's a mark, I think, of a fantastic actor.
Yeah,
Nancy Allen, everybody. Okay, that is Dress to Kill.
Let's dive into Blowout, shall we? From 1981, we got. Here's the back of the box. In the enthralling Blowout, brilliantly crafted by Brian De Palma, John Travolta gives one of his greatest performances as a movie sound effects man who believes he has accidentally recorded a political assassination. He enlists the help of a possible eyewitness to the crime, Carrie's Nancy Allen, who may be in danger herself, to uncover the truth. With its jolting stylistic flourishes, intricate plot, profoundly felt characterizations, and gritty evocation, gritty evocation of early 1980s Philadelphia, Blowout is an American paranoia thriller unlike any other, as well as a devilish reflection on movie making. In my words, I would say why you should check it out is if you saw All the President's Men and thought it was kind of boring, but you saw Winter Kills but thought it was too nonsensical, then Blowout is your choice dish here.
I was gonna say Blowout would be a great pairing with Winter Kills.
Yeah, it's like, here's what a deranged person would make, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
all the same. But here's what like a guy who like cares about the working class would make. Because I think Brian De Palma would consider himself like a working class guy, just like how he dresses. In the Noah Baumbach interview that I'll be referencing throughout this discussion, he says that like a lot of his wardrobe choices for his characters are based on like how he would dress, or like very functional kind of things. He's like, I'm a working guy. He's like, I'm not too concerned about like looking great. And it's like, I just wear a jacket. And Noah Baumbach's like, because it's got pockets. He's like, yeah.
He's like, you get it?
Yeah, this guy gets me. So Blowout. A quick overview of like the plot, if you're unfamiliar with it, is John Travolta is the sound guy, and we start with his work on this like what they call a porno horror film that starts. It's like a co-ed slasher kind of thing, which is, if you didn't know what you were watching, feels like a Giallo. Actually,
yeah.
It's a heavy breathing POV shot of some guy just peeping in.
Yeah, the killer. Kind of like how Halloween starts out. You know?
Yeah. This is Halloween if someone watched it and then was like, I'm going to make that with one hand, actually. But it's just like this very over the top, like
a grindhouse kind of movie.
Yeah, like deliberately like sexist and violent, almost to be like kind of like spitting in the face of like anyone who has critiqued him for that in the past. Been like, I'll show you sexist and violent as a movie within my like pretty serious like political thriller. I could do both.
Yeah.
Fuck you kind of thing, you know?
Here's what that looks like.
Yeah. And what that looks like was Noah Baumbach saying like, oh yeah, I love the touches of like shower on the door to the facilities. And we get like, in that moment, we also get so much like De Palma still loving Hitchcock, right? Because it ends, that whole sequence in the beginning ends with a shower sequence.
Yeah, shower murder.
But here's the twist, and what drives the rest of Blowout is that scream is just awful. It's just terrible. You gotta get rid of that.
I love that is kind of like a C plot in this movie. Is when the killer pulls the curtain aside. Am I going to steal your thunder here?
No, go ahead.
When the killer pulls the curtain aside, the girl she's naked in the shower, and she's got a look of terror in her face. She just kind of goes, ah! It's like the worst scream. I was watching it with Brittany, and she fucking just laughed.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're supposed to, because it's a terrible scream. And so it's a C plot in this movie where the director of that movie is like, I need you to get me a good scream to put in this. And that introduces John Travolta's like job in the movie.
Yeah, he's like, Jack. His name's Jack Terry. He's like, Jack, what are you doing here? He's like, what did you put in there? Because he just assumes that he put that scream in there.
Yeah.
He's like, no, that's on location. That's her. That's the real deal. That's what you record. He's like, oh, well, that's not going to be good. We need to go get a better one. And that conversation was inspired by like a real conversation that De Palma had with his like sound folks.
Yeah.
So he's like, that was actually kind of humorous in a retrospect, and it inspired me to make this. So that is almost verbatim a conversation that he's had before. So again, De Palma putting his own personal flourish to it. So that kind of kickstarts the movie proper, because he has to go out and get like additional recordings of like wind and stuff. So he's on the bridge. He's like trying to record some wind, and he kind of gets it like right away. And we're like, nice. Mm-hmm. But then he starts picking up things like extra, and he's like, well, while I'm out here, let me just get this little idle conversation of these lovers on the bridge, you know.
His like De Palma's movies, like overall, just like have an air of voyeurism to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, here John Travolta's character is being a voyeur in like a different way. Like he's not like a peeping Tom. He's
an audio voyeur.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's like recording this couple having conversation. She's like, that guy over there.
He's a creep.
Yeah.
He's looking at us. And the guy's like,
Unbothered. Unbothered.
he's just from a distance. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pointing my mechanical dick right at you. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah. So then they go away, and he's like, all right. What else am I getting here? And we get like other sounds, like a frog croaking. I almost forgot the word. They got a frog. They got a frog frogging. They get an owl owling. But then there's like this little noise that we'll hopefully come back to before the owl like is hooting. There's like a kind of noise, and he's kind of like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And we don't get a shot, like a it's not a point of view, because I want to circle back to something right after I explain the scene. It's not a point of view shot, but it's like a subjective shot of what he's recording. Like, it's not from his perspective of what the sound is being recorded, but we don't even get that shot of the until we get the owl hooting. Then we get oh, that's an owl. Hoo, hoo. Then we get the shot of the owl turning. Good split diopter shot there too. And then like almost immediately after that, we get the sound of a car speeding down this like empty street, and it's alone. So he's like, okay, he just naturally gravitates toward that. And then we hear something odd, like two percussive sounds, and it's, and then the car veers off and into the river, and he's like, oh, Jesus Christ, or something like that.
I think he does say Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And then, being an upstanding guy, he puts his stuff down and dives right in to see what's going on. And then we, turns out Nancy Allen was in there, so he saves her from there. And then we cut to the hospital, where he's like recounting what happened. He's like, oh, I pulled this woman out of the river. And this guy's like kind of like dismissive of his story right off the bat. He's like, okay, so yeah, it was just, this broad was there is basically what he's saying.
Yeah.
He's like, hold on.
She was in the car? Are you sure about that?
Are you sure about that? He's like, yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he knows who the guy is on the fucking stretcher.
Yeah, he knows something.
He knows who she is, and he's trying to like guide him to like not say that she was in the car.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
As he's like shaking his head, and Volta's like, yeah, what is there an echo in here? Yeah, of course, I know what I saw. And then he has that interaction with Nancy Allen. It's very sweet. They introduce each other. They're kind of like, she's like heavily drugged, right? Because she just had this traumatic experience, almost drowned in the car. My quick brief aside about that moment is because we mentioned briefly that De Palma and Nancy Allen were married at this time. So I don't know if you knew this, but during that shoot of that sequence, they shot it on a stage, and Nancy Allen is claustrophobic. So she was like really hesitant about doing the thing. And
she does the body double thing where she's like,
yeah, actually, that may have inspired Body Double.
oh wow.
Now that I think about it, but she had like this look of terror, says De Palma. But she was like, okay, I'll do it because that'll make that scene so much better. If you see me in the car.
This is the car scene where she's under the water.
Yeah, and it's filling up with water.
Okay.
Before he can break the window. So that shot is her in the car. Yeah, like that's a real stunt that she did. But he learned after they got the shot that the stunt people who were setting up that rig or whatever, they had failed to do it before that. Like the car had collapsed.
Oh my God.
Twice. So this one was like, we think we fixed it.
Oh my God.
I know, right? And he was like, I was devastated by that. He was like, I was already hesitant because she's claustrophobic. God damn it. You know?
He put his wife in the fucking car. Wow.
Yeah. So that was like an instance of getting your art, but like not realizing just how risky it was until after the fact.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the hospital. They have that interaction. And I want to talk about this because this is actually one of the key scenes I wanted to talk about, was immediately after their interaction. And it's when Jack Terry witnesses the governor's body getting wheeled into the hospital.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know what he sees at first, just like he doesn't know exactly what he's in, like what kind of trouble he's in right now.
He does not understand what's happening right now.
And we get this like beautiful audio treat of him coming out into the hospital. All of a sudden it's getting like a fervor is starting to build. And you see like some press come in, they're snapping off pictures, and he's like, okay, what's going on over there? And then we see like a stretcher go by, and we see it like just get briefly covered up. And so he follows that. He's like, what is that? Who is this guy? And he's looking over there. And then we start hearing like little mumbles of like, oh, this guy, Jack Terry. He took her out of the car. I wrote the line down. This guy, Jack Terry, he took her out of the car. That's him over there. He's being a real horse's ass. And I don't know how we're going to keep the lid on this guy.
Yeah.
So we hear that. And then he kind of like, I think he looks over. So we like establish where those guys are standing, where the guy who interviewed him and what we're later going to learn is the governor's handler.
Yeah.
Are having that conversation.
It's like chief of staff or something.
Yeah. He goes, okay, those guys are over there. Looks back. I think there's even more press now. It's like a madhouse over there. And he's like, okay, because of this guy over here, looks back at the stretcher. And we still don't see much because now like the hospital staff is crowding around him too. And then we get this great split diopter shot of Travolta on the left side of frame, like profiled. And then on the right side of frame, we get the interviewer guy and the governor's handler, and they're still yapping away like, oh, Jack Terry, Jack Terry. And then he whips his head over there in their direction. And then the guy with the notepad, Mr. fucking know-it-all, is like, you, points at him, and then beckons him over with the finger. And I just thought that was so funny. That was a funny cap on that little sequence because that's so, what's the word? Like, he's treating him like an infant. It's like infantile to beckon a grown-ass man with the finger, like, you, get over here. You've done something wrong. He hasn't done shit wrong. He saved a woman's life.
Yeah. But in doing so has created a problem for a powerful person.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Which I think that's where De Palma's political sensibilities come in of like, this is a class thing.
Yeah.
And he is lower class. And he's now having to be politely reminded that, no, you didn't see a woman there.
And he even has a line where he's like, the chief of staff is doing the same kind of thing where he's trying to like lead him to like deny that he pulled her out of the car. And then John Travolta goes, well, it's the truth, isn't it? You know? Mm-hmm. And that's like a definitive line for that character, because now, this is a guy who's going to, in the Giallo kind of convention of it, he's going to fight for the truth. He's going to be the outsider who's attempting to solve the case.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that the handler has some line of like, who gives a damn about like what your version of the truth is? Yeah. He's like, it's all about like the image.
Yeah.
Like,
he's like, who does that help?
Yeah. Who does that help? It's like, do you want his wife hearing about how he had his hand up another girl's skirt?
Yeah.
Again, who gives a fuck about that? Like, the truth is what ultimately matters. So like, we're drawing a line in the sand. We are firmly in Jack Terry's camp here. So that's a key scene.
Absolutely.
I really like that scene. And then skipping ahead a bit to like more like what the movie is or is about. Then we get like the revelation that, oh, he wasn't the only one there. There was this photographer.
You see it though in that scene when he jumps in the water. If you have a keen eye, you can see a guy go, oh shit, and then run away.
Yeah, and then take off on the bridge.
Yeah.
Which again is just De Palma being very smart about showing you up front what is going on, but it's up to you to be the smart viewer to pick out those details.
Exactly.
And not like, be on your phone like now, or like have a conversation with someone in the theater and like, oh, I totally missed that.
He's not going to direct your attention to the thing. He's going to show you the whole scene as it is.
Yeah.
The reality of the scene.
Mm-hmm. And that photographer is Dennis Franz, the man. And he's like, yeah, I was there. I took the pictures. And he's like, oh,
I had this new high-speed film stock. I was checking it out.
Yeah. It was at night, but you can hardly even tell. You can see everything. Like, was the governor alone? Hey, you looked alone to me. You do not believe a fucking word this little sleazeball is saying.
He's kind of like this is like not a one-to-one comparison, but it's like he's got the Jack Ruby kind of air about him, right? Because this we're talking about a political assassination that's just occurred, right? And he's this kind of like not necessarily a fall guy, but he's a cog in the wheel that's going to sell the story.
Yeah.
That it wasn't an assassination.
He's like, hey, they're paying me.
Yeah.
That's really all he cares about. And that works in their favor. They're like, oh, this guy can be bought.
Right.
He loves to be bought. He would willingly be bought. But not Travolta. No, he has integrity, and he can't be bought.
The fact that he like records sounds, right? That's a metaphor, right? You can't fake the sound. What you record on the magnetic tape is what happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What you record on film is what happened. And the whole movie, he's trying to prove what happened, and he's trying to find Dennis Franz's film. He's trying to figure out what exactly he recorded that night, you know?
Yeah. That's another key scene is when he does get his hands on those pictures because they're like just publishing it in the paper, which is like, I think De Palma says that's a very like overt reference to the Zapruder film from the Kennedy assassination, just being like constantly on loop on TV. Like you saw that. Yeah. When that happened, you saw those images.
Even Dennis Franz is like, this is bigger than the Zapruder film. You know?
Okay. Yeah. So then they print it, which is like ghoulish. It's somehow more ghoulish than running it on TV all the time because like back then I don't think you could like really like record TV. It was just the signal, really. Like there was the film. It was captured obviously. But like this one was just like, oh yeah, everyone like you got $5? We'll show you this tragedy. Like come pick it up at your local newsstand.
And that's part of the conspiracy of trying to convince everyone that look, it was just an accident, you know? But what does he find in the pictures?
No, he sees like the muzzle flash. You're right. Because
is it the muzzle flash or the bullet?
I think it's the muzzle flash because it's so far away. There's no way you can like see the bullet from that far away. Mm-hmm. But I think they're implying with the picture of him like making the reel of the pictures is that there's the flash of the gun, and then when he's listening back to his tape in the hotel, when you get that, it's not even a split diopter shot. It's something like completely unique, I think, of him like listening as he visualizes the blowout happening. Yeah. And you see like this wheel of the the vehicle spinning, and you see it like get punctured by a bullet, but that's right after you see in the background a flash. And it goes through the wheel. So I think it's the muzzle flash.
The whole point of it being that if it were just an accident, you'd only hear one noise. Yeah. You'd hear just the blowout.
Yeah. Everyone's trying to be like, it's an echo.
Yeah.
Like, no.
He's like, it's a gunshot and the blowout together.
Yeah.
I love that this movie is so just kind of technical.
Yeah, it's so technical, and I even wrote, it's like tactile.
Yes.
I love how much he's working with his hands.
Yes.
To like both literally and like spiritually take control of the narrative of like, no, I'm going to assemble something of proof. Like you can't deny this like physical proof if I assemble it, you know. I take all these disparate pieces and put them together. And that's kind of like a meta commentary on filmmaking of like, filmmaking is an illusion that you've creatively assembled with your hands. But like, what if it was used to try to uncover political conspiracy too? That's what the question of this movie is. And then the ending, right? Kind of says, it doesn't fucking matter. It just says, so what? Despite his best efforts to use his smarts, his wits, his technology, in the end, all he got out of it was a good scream. It was a real good scream, you know? And that didn't sit right with a lot of people at the time.
That it had a downer ending.
Such a fucking downer of an ending. What happens is that he's getting too close to the truth. And the the gunman, played by John Lithgow,
Yeah.
he's also going off script too, from like his hired gig, which was just supposed to kill the governor.
Yeah.
And he's like,
there's that great scene where he talks
he's
to,
like, nah, fuck all that.
he's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm achieving the objective, sir. I went outside in reasonable means.
Yeah. I know the plan, and I decided it was garbage.
Yes. He's like, I don't know you.
So yeah, he's staging these Liberty Day like killings of like killing people that kind of look like Nancy Allen
Yeah.
to achieve the ultimate goal of killing her,
Silencing a witness.
wrapping up that loose thread. But also he has found out where Jack Terry works and has erased all of his tapes.
I love that scene.
That's such a good scene. You want to talk about it?
So we're in a portion of the movie where he's just really like going back and forth, trying to talk to people and show them this proof, right? And so he's made, like an original copy, and he's hidden it, right?
He like put it
in the air duct.
Yeah.
But he goes back to his office, and I think he's like just kind of going back to like the C plot, like trying to work on his actual job for a second.
Yeah.
So he puts something in and notices that it's not like playing. He's getting white noise.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's weird. And so he puts something else in.
Yeah.
And that also gives him white noise. And
Yeah.
he's
It's starting to compound.
and so he's starting to put things in all these different players, and it's just such a frenetic scene. And he's realizing all of his fucking tapes have been wiped.
Yeah.
And that leads to the realization, oh my God, they know that I'm getting close to this.
Yeah.
And so they've sent someone to like destroy the evidence that I have.
Yeah.
And that also gives him the resolve he needs to go, you know what? I'm going to work even harder to get this out.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, they're on to me. And then that guy who he's trying to submit the evidence to, I think he's like an internal
like a
affairs
cop,
guy
yeah.
or a cop, is like, what do you mean they? Who was they?
Yeah.
You know? But I love the way that scene is shot with the white noise, the tapes on the white noise, because it's just a rotating camera around his like workspace. And it's wonderful because it's like the reel of the audio tape spinning and spinning, but it's also him like spiraling further and further into this conspiracy. He's not backing down; he's doubling down.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. Fuck. He's such a goddamn master.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I love that interaction with the cop of like, who's they kind of thing, because then it harkens back to something I don't think we've talked about yet, which was the revelation that Jack Terry had this like traumatic moment, his like rubber ducky moment, right? Which was doing internal affairs stuff work for
he was like he was like a wire guy for like the FBI or something.
yeah.
And there was a bad job where he hooked up a mob guy
Yeah.
to record a conversation.
Because like the chief was trying to get paid off. So he's trying to catch dirty cops.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, a man
truth.
committed to the truth.
Yeah.
But the guy he hooks up, and this is where it's kind of funny, right?
It's kind of funny.
He's so nervous that he's sweating through his suit, and it's causing the battery in the fucking recorder to arc. And he's like, it's burning a hole in him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, hey, fellas, can you pull over? I need to take a piss.
Yeah. And so, but they're following him, and he gets out, and he's like, I gotta get in there. And he goes, and the guy's got a fucking, he's just hanging. They fucking Jeffrey Epstein him. And, he's got the tape recorder out, and like they knew, they saw.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just like maybe not another at this point in the movie, but that's one indication that his belief in this technology is not going to come through at the end of the day. There's a unknowable human element that is going to come through and fuck up his best laid plans. And it does, because John Lithgow has already got his wheels spinning.
Yeah.
And now his piece de resistance is to tap into John Travolta's phones, and he learns that this reporter I think his name's like Frank Donahue or something. I like that character too. Like seemingly believes him. He's like, hey, I would love to get that tape. Imagine the story. If we play it on the air and we get you and the woman to show up to we'll blow this thing wide open kind of thing. And he's like, oh man, my tapes have been erased. He's like, I don't even know if I could trust you. But he gets a phone call from him and he's like, okay, I'll do it, but I can't sign on for Sally. He doesn't tell her name, which is key. Yeah. He doesn't tell her anything. He's like, she's not down for it kind of thing, but I'll sign in for it. I'll sign up for it. Hangs up, and then John Lithgow calls Nancy Allen, Sally, and he's like, hey, it's Frank Donahue, by the way. Jack Terry tells me blah, blah, blah. And bless her heart, she believes him. Yeah. He's like, okay, yeah, sure, let's blow this thing wide open. And then she meets up with John Travolta, and he's like, I've been trying to call you all day, kind of thing. Like, Frank Donahue reached out to me. And he's like, how? I didn't give him your number. Yeah. Like, I didn't give him your name, really. And she's like, well, he's a reporter. He's going to find that stuff out. And we're just like, fuck. Yeah. Like, she's not wrong either.
The hitman's just that good.
He's just that good. He went off script because he wrote a masterpiece. And yeah, so he, long story short, there's like this elaborate, beautiful chase. We get like the reveal that noise is like this like Garrett. Yeah. Or Garrote. Garrett. Device in like his watch that he uses to strangle, in this case, women that look like Nancy Allen. Yeah. To like establish a string of Liberty Day murders. So she's just another one of those bodies. At the end of the day, we're like, oh no, his plan's too perfect. Mm-hmm. And this is another guy who, like Travolta, is getting the work done with his own hands, kind of thing. So there's that duality of like this guy's using his hands to accomplish evil.
His fucking black glove covered hands.
His Giallo hands. Yes. Yeah. He's accomplishing evil. But Jack Terry is like, okay, before you go, he's like, my alarm is already going off. But before you go, let's wire you up. I'm like, I know it hasn't worked before, but I have faith in this process still. Yeah, yeah. And it allows him to like be close enough proximity to hear what's going on, but not enough to eventually stop what happens, which was at like the peak of the Liberty Day parade. Fireworks are going off. We get like this big swelling score. Sally realizes that this guy is here to kill her. He's not Frank Donahue, and he's taking her somewhere. And Jack Terry's running through the crowd, being like, no, shit. He knows he's too late.
He's taking her to the fireworks where they're having this Liberty Day parade as a sort of like crescendo to the fake murder spree he's building out. You know? Yeah.
It's perfect cover because you can scream all you want. The fireworks are going to cover it up. And she does scream during one of these like in between moments. And we hear it and it's blood curdling and so raw and real. And he sees it. But he still rushes ahead and he's running up on John Lithgow, but he's too late. He's already like 10 stabs or something into that. Yeah. Into the murder of Sally. But he does like grab him and grab the ice pick in his hand and give him a taste of his own medicine and stabs him to death too. So we're like, fuck yeah. Oh yeah, sick. That was rad.
But then he realizes he's too late, and this fucking gorgeous shot. I don't know how they did it. I think it's got to be. It looks like rear projection.
I don't think it is though.
But it's a 360 shot. So it's like, how did they do that? But like he's holding Sally close, and he's failed again. Yeah. You know, and the fireworks are going off in the background.
But we don't hear it because we hear this like beautiful score by Pino Donaggio.
Yeah. Which is, so last night I was rewatching the movie, and I sent you a video, and I was like, please tell me where I've heard this before.
And I was like, I got you.
Did you know immediately?
I was already writing something about it. So yeah, it was just a weird circumstance of like, I actually already had this info.
So what other movie is it used in?
Death Proof. Tarantino. Because he unlike the masses at the time when Blowout was released, was like, that's one of the best endings I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's like, that's a beautifully haunting ending.
Haunting.
Which was haunting, like the fireworks, the score. But then there's still like a little bit more of the movie, and it's him using her scream in his job to put it to that terrible horror movie we saw in the beginning. And the first thing the director says when he hears it, that's a perfect scream. Or something to that effect.
His John Travolta's cynicism has finally won.
Yeah.
And his last, I think, act of defiance, his last attempt to tell the truth, is to put a real scream of someone about to die in this sleazy horror movie. Mm-hmm. It's haunting is a great word for it.
Yeah. And he just says, it's a good scream. It's a good scream. And then he hears it again, and he like clutches his hands over his ears. He's just like, it's going to drive him insane.
Yeah.
And the movie's over. And it's a good ass movie. And I think it's Quentin Tarantino says it's his favorite De Palma. So of course he would use that score in some capacity. And he used it in Death Proof.
Yeah. I can see it being Tarantino's favorite because it is so kind of meta cinematic as well, you know? Fuck. Yeah.
So kind of a downer, but let me lead you off with some like goofy little tidbits from the interview that he conducted with Noah Baumbach in 2010.
Okay.
So I want the listeners to bear in mind, if they don't know De Palma, you do now, because go watch these movies. They're fantastic.
De Palma, I'll say this first.
Yeah.
The fact that De Palma is not taught in film schools is a disservice to film students.
Yeah. Because
this is someone who is so in command of every facet of a film, right? And just because of the subject matter and the sleaziness of his films gets utterly ignored by like the film establishment. It's crazy. It's a crime.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll keep him alive. So. And so in this interview, bear in mind that Brian De Palma is the type of guy who says things like, give me a break, or geez Louise, or holy mackerel. He'll like put his hands on his head and be like, holy mackerel.
That's the teddy bearness of him.
Yeah. And figure it out, pal. Is like another thing he says.
I want to steal that now.
It's great. Yeah. So Noah Baumbach asked De Palma early on if the opening sequence with the horrible horror film was an intentional nod to his reputation at the time.
Yeah.
And the quote from Baumbach is, "Here you are playing with yourself." I just had to mention that. You start with this movie, something that's so crassly sexist and violent. And he was like, were you having fun with the audience about that? And he's like, De Palma takes it very literally. He's like, oh, we had a blast shooting that. He's like, I had fun. Yeah. It's like, we were just, after all the very like serious nature of like the rest of the shoot, he's like, we were laughing after every take on that. It was just a good old time. So yeah, I think he was having fun, right? He's like, oh, this is gonna, like, people are gonna have things to say about this, but we're having a grand old time.
Because at the time, so he, like, this is just the year after Dressed to Kill comes out. So he's doing interviews and press junkets and everything. And it's probably like a solid 6 months of people being like, how dare you? He's
like, wait till you see the beginning of my next one.
Yeah. So good for him.
Yeah. I really like this interview because he gets very insightful about his process for shooting the blowout scene and how he wanted to differentiate it between the remembering scene. So he's like, I had to find 2 ways to shoot that. He was always going to use POV shots and intercut them with Jack Terry, like using the pencil as like a stand-in for the boom mic. Which is a fantastic scene.
He's like recalling his actions.
Yeah. So then we get like a little bit of a mix of like subjective shots of the mic, but really every sound gets like a point of view shot, which is new. So that's like new information being shown to us, versus the original events are from a more subjective angle, like from a distance. He's like, I think he said when he envisioned that sequence, he was like, oh, we start here and then bam, bam, bam. And he like pulls back like 3 times.
Yeah. So when we see the scene at first, it's almost like staged, you know, with John Travolta in the background, and he's seeing these things. But now in the remembrance, it's what he remembers seeing from his perspective.
Yeah. That way we're not like retreading the same ground. Essentially, we're seeing a new perspective.
That's good.
Literally.
Yeah.
On it.
God damn, he's good.
He's so good.
Damn him.
Damn the devil. In the Criterion release for Blowout, there's 2 essays, actually. One's a review, the Pauline Kael review that came out in 1981. I'm not even going to bother regurgitating that. Just read it. It's really good. It's kind of like a proud parent review of like, yeah.
Oh, so Pauline likes Blowout.
She loved it.
Okay.
Yeah. She was like, this is what he's been working to make. Like, this is the culmination of his style as an artist and like his voice as like a person too. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Pauline nailed it. Miss Kael, I don't want to sound disrespectful at all by saying first name only.
I mean, so much so that like, so we talked about Body Double before this, right? And like Blowout, Sisters was leading to Dress to Kill.
Yeah.
Dress to Kill was leading to Blowout, you know? Probably I think that's where he peaked a little bit, because like you look at Body Double, which came out in 1984. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's not as good of a movie as Blowout, technically speaking. You know what I mean?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like fully satisfying on like a academic level, or just like
just like realized.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
What,
Thank you.
What I will say, Pauline, we're on a first name basis. What Pauline was saying is that is the movie that is representative of all of what De Palma's style is, you know?
Yeah.
But you get less of it with Body Double.
Probably. But then I think also at that time, he's also bouncing back from Scarface and the critical reception of that when it came out, which was not good. Again, like most De Palma movies, like all De Palma movies, later in life get like, you know what? Pretty damn good, actually.
Right.
But then, you know, his marriage with Nancy Allen also didn't last that movie too. So he's a totally different guy just a few short years later.
Right.
So he's in a different headspace.
For sure.
And that your masterpiece was like dismissed on release. Damn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how good your ego is. You're kind of like,
You're kind of wondering who you
Wounded.
are at that point.
yeah,
You know?
you're licking your wounds a little bit. But yeah, Blowout, I think, is probably his masterpiece too. I would agree with Pauline, first name basis. And
Whoa.
only you?
Yes.
Ah, damn it. What about Quentin? Yeah. Okay. All my ownership is of Quentin on first name basis. You can have Pauline. Okay. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful movie, despite the downer ending, because of how fitting it is to the character and to the story he wanted to tell, and about his sensibilities as both a filmmaker and as like his political beliefs of like the working class and what they are realistically like the hand that they're dealt in these times, which is fight for the truth as much as you can, and realize that sometimes, more often than not, it's going to amount to nothing, or amount to being a scream used in a bad horror movie. Essentially, that's what's going to come out of it. Like, the fruits of your labor are not going to be as bountiful as you hope.
Yeah. And speaking of hope, don't be deterred by the hopelessness you'll eventually be overcome by. you know,
Yeah.
in the effort for for truth and justice.
Yeah, that's not to mean that the fight is always worth fighting.
Yeah.
But just realize that the end result is going to be, it is what it is sometimes, you know?
And that is Dress to Kill and Blowout. The continuation of our erotic thriller conversation we're going backwards a little bit, in the evolution of these things.
I think that's natural for a discussion on De Palma, though.
Yeah.
Is we kind of have to look back for De Palma and be like, hey, let's have a discussion about that, because they were not given their fair due in the broad cultural sense.
Absolutely. And then I think next time we're going to go back even further and look at some actual Giallo films.
Yeah.
From the heyday of the Giallo genre. So I'm really excited to look at those.
Yeah, that's going to be fun, because then we get to indulge in our little sicko selves. We like that. We like that kind of stuff here. Just because they're for sickos doesn't mean they're also not two certified bangers. You know?
Yeah. I think we're here for a good time.
Yeah.
Right? That's it for this week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.